Welcome to the Tearing It Up podcast. I'm your host, Taryn. We'll be tearing it up, tearing it down, and tearing it apart, dissecting all things related to those who deviate from the standard. From leaders of their industry to leaders of mediocrity, and maybe a gear review or two thrown in. We shoot the shit and let the conversations flow, so if that's not your style, this may not be for you. Otherwise, listen in. Hope to light a fire in you somehow. Hello, everybody out there. We are back on our bike talk again this week, and I'm really excited to have the founder of Shredly here with us today, Ashley. Is it Rankin or Rankin? Rankin. Okay. That's one thing I'm really bad about. You were so lovely, nicely talking about my organization for the podcast, and I appreciate it so much. But one thing I always forget to do is beforehand ask for the correct pronunciation of last names usually. And then I get on, I'm like, oh no, I hope I don't screw this up. But yeah. Well, I'm really excited to have her here. I've been following Shredly for quite a few years now, and I haven't had the chance to meet you in person yet at any of these events that I've gone to, which is not a whole lot, just the Sturdy Dirty and whatnot, but I've met some of your crew. I've seen your amazing stuff, and then reading about you a little bit more and learning about your background in like actual fashion design and things. I can't wait to hear about how it went to this world from where you were. Like, it feels like a 180 degree turn. Yep. So where are you right now as we have this conversation?
So I am physically in Northern California, which is new for me. I'm from Colorado, and then my partner and I recently moved from Seattle to Northern California where he grew up. So I'm in brand new territory. We just moved in May. So settling in. And where are you? Because I know you've been in this area, like the Tahoe area.
Yeah, I'm in Truckee.
Oh, nice. Okay, so we're in, technically, get ready, we're in Rough and Ready, which is a real place.
Yeah.
And you've heard of it?
Oh,
People
yeah.
Never heard of it are like, wait, Rough and Rowdy? Rough and Ready? Like, that's a real place. If you don't know about it, very proud of itself for seceding from the Union in like 1850 or something. And so that's, I think, Rough and Ready's claim to fame, but it's right outside of Grass Valley in Nevada City.
Yeah. So you're really close to me.
Yeah. So
in the grand scheme. Yeah, absolutely. I remember coming across Rough and Ready. It was probably the first time I came to Truckee because I was in Oroville and a group of us were going to Tahoe to go to a job fair. And so we passed through it, like getting on the 20 or the 4 somewhere along. And we all saw the sign and just like laughed, like, is this for real? Like Rough and Ready. And I just love when I'm coming that way, coming home and like seeing the sign. It's always like, oh, we're pretty close. So now like closer to 80, like last stretch home or whatnot. And then I'm from the Tacoma area, and that's where Amber is located now, who wasn't able to join us today. But yeah, so we've been in some pretty similar areas for a long time.
Too funny. Yeah. I don't know if you went through this. Thank you. My dog was whining. I don't know if you could hear. So the door mysteriously opens and she thank you. Well, so did you go through like being from the Pacific Northwest or being in the Pacific Northwest with like the lush, rainy environment going to this area, which can be lush and rainy, but only during certain times of year? I'm adjusting to that.
Yeah, absolutely. How long were you in Seattle?
I was off and on in Seattle like 5 to 7 years. I like to tell people, maybe much to Ben's chagrin, that I accidentally moved there because it wasn't a decision that we made to move there together. We met in Colorado. He moved first. I would go back and forth. And over time, I like left more stuff there, would spend more time there. We got a dog. COVID happened. So it was like this progression. And coming from Colorado, I actually had a hard time with all of the rain at first. It was a beautiful area. I loved it. But it was an adjustment. And then when we left, it was like incredibly emotional. And I realized how much I'd fallen in love with it and that I loved that area. And I found the winters to be kind of cozy, even though I was ready for the rainy season to be over. So it's such a cool area. The combination of, sorry, I'm just getting over COVID.
Oh, no worries.
Just a little frog in my throat. But the combination of water and mountains is like out of this world incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a special place. So we look forward to going back and visiting it, but I'm excited to explore this area too, because it's also incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, it is so beautiful up there. I am so biased to the Northwest for sure. I was really curious about the move from Colorado to the Northwest and how that went. And now, again, kind of switching climates because they can be pretty drastic. So I feel like I didn't have a super hard time because my move was also a little bit progressive. When I came down to Tahoe in 2014, I had a plan of like only the winter. And then all my other, like there was a big group of us from Washington. After the winter, almost everybody left except for there was 3 of us, one who had moved to Truckee full time in the first place. And then my other friend and I, we were going to stay. We're like, okay, well, let's do a summer. But we could only find a year lease. Like there was no short term, just summer leases. So we're like, okay, looks like we're staying another winter. So that put me into like 2016. And I left to go fish in Alaska, came back for a winter. And then it was like I bought a camper and I was going to travel around and like storm chase for the winter. But the winter was so good here in Tahoe that year. I didn't have to go anywhere. So I stayed, went to Alaska for another summer, came back. And then that's when it was like in 2017, like, okay, well, I'm staying a while. So I feel like those first few years I was going back up north. So I wasn't fully into the dry summer thing. But now it's weird. I've been here like about a decade minus those like 2 summers. And I go back up to Washington and I'm like, oh, it's 60 degrees up there is not 60 degrees down here. It's like kind of cold. It's wet and cold. I'm like, dang.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's such a difference. Well, now my favorite thing to do is to look at the weather of everywhere. Like I'll look at Colorado, I'll look here, I'll look in Seattle, and it's so drastically different everywhere. But like when it's similar temperature, like if it's 70 here and 70 there, feels very, very different.
Very different. I have to really stop and think when I pack now. I've finally gotten to that point to be able to do that. I'm like, okay, look at the weather, but it is 60 degrees and that isn't like my shorts and t-shirt weather that I'd be out here in like tanning or something, I'm like, okay, I do have to pack pants and a jacket. So yeah, it's crazy how drastic it can be, but both areas are so, so beautiful. And you said, has it been just 1 month since you've been back down there in Rough and Ready?
We lived in May.
Oh, so okay, in May.
It was like it was such a beautiful spring, but it was before it got hot, and it's been like an unseasonably hot summer. Yes. So everyone, I am comforted by the fact that everyone's like, this does not feel normal. Like this is hotter than normal. So that's what it was like when I moved to Seattle. When I moved, it was really mild winter, like not rainy. And I was like, I don't know if I believe that it always rains here. And we hiked like almost year round. Granted, the trade-off was it was a terrible ski season. That was a bummer. But then I experienced one of those winters that would not end. And realized, okay, so I feel like everywhere I like officially relocate somewhere, it's not a normal season. So my expectations are all over the place.
Yeah, totally. I was just talking with someone yesterday up here and just how we're ready for summer to end because it's been so hot here. Yeah. Like we haven't gotten too much of a break. June, it started off just hot. June was really warm and then it just stayed. And I'm like, can we please?
There was no transition. It was
exactly
like wet green spring, wouldn't stop raining, and then all of a sudden hot and dry.
Yeah. So I'm ready for the weather to change, but it doesn't look like it's in a hurry too when I look at the forecast. So speaking of, Colorado and all these places you've been, Colorado is the place where it all started, like where you were born and raised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I was lucky enough to travel internationally in high school, but up until my adult life before accidentally moving to Seattle, I was Colorado through and through. I was born and raised there. I went to school in Colorado. I stayed in Colorado after school. And so it wasn't that I was afraid to leave, but I had this period of I grew up in Carbondale, which is right outside of Aspen. It's in the Roaring Fork Valley. It's incredibly beautiful. You don't know how lucky you are to be from there when you're from there because you don't know anything else. So it wasn't really until I went to college in northern Colorado and spent more time on the Front Range where everybody wants to go to the mountains on the weekends and stuff that I really started to realize like, wow, it's a lot of work to get up there. I'm so lucky that this was kind of I grew up in the place that we're all trying to get to and the traffic on the weekends and stuff. And then I studied abroad. I had this funny like split side of me because I grew up in the mountains playing outside kind of in the sticks. Like we didn't live in town. I always wanted to live in town, played with like the few neighbor kids that lived close by. We would like make our own jumps and obstacle courses with the bikes. And I was like crimped hair, painted nails. I had this dream of being a designer and I wanted to move to New York. I had never been to New York and I had never gone to New York until I was in my late 30s. But I just had this dream that like, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to New York. I wanted to be a high-end couture designer and design evening wear and bridal and live in a high-rise apartment. Like that sounded appealing to me. And it's because I had no idea. And then I went to school in Fort Collins. I went to CSU. And it's like a big town, small city. Still didn't get like the big city experience. But then I studied abroad in Florence and I fell madly in love with Italy. And I was either going to try and stay in Italy or I had this draw that was like, I need to get back to the mountains. I remember I went to Switzerland one weekend and I was on top of this mountain. I'd taken a train and then a tram to the top of this little mountain. And I just could see as far as, as far as the eye could see. And I just felt like a sense of home that was very different than my love affair with Italy, where I also was in love with the city and everything that came with it. So I had to decide. I felt very lost after college. Like I didn't have a Northern Star. It was just these two things. I didn't want to give up design, but I didn't want to move to a city and I wanted to go back to the mountains. And so I didn't go to any job fairs. I tried to procrastinate the inevitable as much as possible, but then I had to get a job. So I had spent time in Crested Butte with one of my best friends. And then I got a job offer in Aspen. So I moved to Aspen, skied a ton, biked a ton, was like kind of living my like mountain dream, had a good job in real estate. And then the design like started to come back to me where it was like, I loved the fashion side of working in a professional office environment. And so that I like kind of got my fix that way. But when I was riding a lot, my girlfriends and I started to complain, like, we just don't love the options. Like, why can't we have cute shorts? Why can't we have comfortable shorts? Why it's really weird because fashion at the time in street style was so far ahead of sport fashion that like, I wouldn't say that fitness fashion, that athleisure, like none of that really existed quite yet. So there was no fashion influence on it. And it was like, I'd put on my bike apparel and feel like I was 2 decades behind, like my street style.
Absolutely.
And so it's so funny to look back. Like I look back at pictures and it's like, we look like we're stuck in the early 90s and it's 2010.
Yeah.
It's really funny. And it's changed so much since, luckily. But that was where I started to just be like, I know what I want. I keep imagining all these different fun shorts, different cuts, maybe different silhouettes, just a little bit more flattering, maybe a little bit more feminine. And that's what started the idea. Didn't know I wanted to start a business. I kind of just wanted to make cute shorts for me and my friends. And one thing led to another. And here we are. We're still around.
Yeah. So when was it that you made your first pair of bike shorts? What year?
So first samples would have come in 2011. So I like really in 2010, I decided like I have this idea. I want to do it. I trademarked the name, got the website, just like little things like that. And then I pretty much spent 2011 getting it all ready because I still had a full-time job. And this was very much just like a side project idea. Didn't really know where it was going to go. And then in January of 2012, I launched the Kickstarter campaign. And crowdfunding was really new at that point. I had never even heard of Kickstarter. A friend of a friend told me about it. Seemed very scary, very different. And Instagram was getting popular. So on the same day, which brands, it's so different now. But on the very same day that our Kickstarter launched, website launched, Facebook launched, and Instagram launched. So we literally I started with nothing, and everything kind of was announced on the same day. I lived and breathed Kickstarter for 30 days. Our project was successful, which was like a huge emotional journey for me. And so this is what I would do for 30 days. I just was like promoting the heck out of it, working full time. On the weekends, I would drive around with my sample set to bike shops, and I was trying to get wholesale orders at the same time that I was trying to get the Kickstarter campaign funded. So it was just like all of it kind of came together. And there was, it was January, so nothing exciting was happening in the bike world. It's quiet. People weren't really thinking about riding yet. And it was I really feel like Shredly was just meant to be, and the time was right. Like the time in the economy wasn't great because it was after the crash of 2008. Traditional financing wasn't really available. People had been cutting their women's lines instead of expanding them. So it was like the market was ready for us, but everything else was really hard to piece together. But it ended up being great timing for us. We got a lot of organic press. People were just excited to hear something new. There was nothing else out there like it. Like, wait, there's a women's brand for women. And it's a small company. Like that was just not very common in the apparel side of the bike industry. So it was kind of the perfect recipe, really. And all those things worked in our favor.
Yeah, 2012 was early for all of that. A lot of the other companies, it felt like kind of started around 2015, 16, poking their heads through, but it really feels like it wasn't until 2018, 19 that you were seeing like them more prominently in either bigger stores or just more of them popping up. So then because there was more of them, you heard about the other ones who had been around a few years before. And it is so crazy, like you mentioned, it looking like we were in the 90s and it was 2010. And so yeah, now it's like 14 years ago. But the other thing too is not only were we just wearing like ugly kind of women's gear, like there just wasn't a lot of women's options anyways, even from the bigger companies. So you're wearing men's stuff that's ill-fitting. And I mean, it's still an issue for a lot of women today because they either don't know about these brands, they're shopping at big box stores or whatnot, and it's still just kind of shrink it and pink it. It's changing obviously so much these days, but there's still, I think, the general like population who are just getting into things, like they haven't discovered the like real niche like women's brands quite yet. Like if you're in it, you know of them all, but if you're not, like you're just still picking through kind of not so great fitting stuff, but it is at least looking a lot better, and you can find stuff that certainly fits a bit better than it did 10 years ago, but it's still pretty crazy with those big brands that are like, okay, all you're doing is taking a few inches off here, changing it here, and make flowers on it or making it pink or purple or something. But that's a crazy time to get it, like to start a business, like you mentioned as well, coming out of 2008 in the economy. What was the Kickstarter for, like a full order, or was that getting samples? Did you have samples before the Kickstarter launched?
So Kickstarter was actually taking consumers pre-orders is how we set it up. So the reward is how you set up Kickstarter,
right?
Was getting like shorts, a top, or like a kit in return. So we basically pre-sold our first production line before it was available to consumers. And I must be wrong. We must not have launched our website at the same time because we didn't have anything to sell yet. We were just pre-selling things. So yeah, that's how we set up our Kickstarter, was that we were just pre-selling our first production line, which that was a big risk for people. Like the product didn't exist yet. They couldn't try it on. We had pictures of, samples, but that was it.
Well, like you said, Kickstarter was also new at that time. So now we all know what it's about, in that you're still taking a risk because this product hasn't gone through a full line. They only have samples. So you don't know really how it's going to turn out when you get the final product, and how many changes might happen the year after or whatever. but it's much less of a, I don't think many people look at it as a risk at all when they're investing money. They care about the business that they are supporting, and they're like, cool, I want the first set of this, and I'm happy to buy every iteration after it. Because in 2012, we were like, am I really gonna get this pant or shirt or anything from this person if I give them the money? What happens here which isn't it, if you don't make your goal, you give the money back?
If you don't so you don't get the money till your project is successful. So it's like held, Kickstarter holds it. And then if it's successful, meaning that you hit your goal, because you have to set a fundraising goal. If you hit the goal, you get funded and you get the money. If you don't hit your goal, it just goes away and people get their money back. So yeah, it's kind of like an all or nothing thing. But you said like the people that support it. So we had 128 Kickstarter backers. And to this day, some of them are like our best salespeople because they felt so much ownership, as they should, in this brand and helping it get off the ground. It was literally, I don't know what we would have done. I would have maybe figured something out, but that was our path that we had chosen. And it's because of those people that we were able to literally fund our first production line. And so they feel ownership over the brand, and they've stayed with us through these years. And it was such a perfect fit for the industry that we were entering. Like, I actually didn't even know, I'm a very recreational rider, grew up riding with my family, rode with friends, but I did never come from the race world. And so I did feel kind of like an outsider when it came to industry, which is, I think, why our brand from the beginning has felt so authentic and welcoming, because it's not like this elite premium created by an athlete, created for professional athletes. Like, we definitely are those things, but we're also just for the people. Like, we're for the friends that want to ride together, for the new people who've never ridden. And I think there's this like mentality behind some of the brands you were talking about before, like not knowing that there are options out there. And it's because like there's funny mentalities that we'll learn from customers who are new. Like, I don't know if I'm cool enough or good enough yet to wear that. And I think that can either deter them from something like ours that's really loud and bright, where they feel like they have to be, like as rowdy of a rider to wear that. Or with like the more well-known brands that have been around forever, that's like, that there's like this mold that you have to fit in to be considered a rider. And we try to break all those rules. Like, we don't want anybody to feel like you have to be any certain level to ride or not to ride or wear or not to wear certain things. It kind of is like pick your own adventure. Ours is meant to be like a really fun experience from the moment that you get dressed, where you're like excited by the prints and they motivate you to want to ride. Like, it's an emotional experience getting dressed, whether you admit it or not. And it's not necessarily just a vanity thing. It's like you can put something on that makes you feel good, that makes you excited. You can put on an outfit that like jives really well and it just makes you feel like you're put together and ready to go, or it's like the inspiration that you need. So it's been really fun to hear about those emotional experiences from women, because I didn't set out to try to create that. I realized after the fact that that's what was inspiring me and making me excited. And then that translated for other people as well.
Yeah, we just talked a little bit about this. We had Mallory, a viewer, on, and we talked a bit about the psychology of clothing and exactly that, how it can make you feel. And we don't always think about it until the moment happens that you're in the fitting room or getting dressed for whatever event. And either that outfit makes you feel like, God damn, I look good, I feel good, or you put it on and you're like, yep, not getting dressed, not going, where's the ice cream, where's the sweats? Like, I give up. So, but it's like, yeah, we gotta kind of start thinking, I think, a little more even before we go shopping and get out of our head and know that it is the clothes, not us. So how does it fit us? Okay, this style just might not work for me, but there is another style that will work better. And it's so cool to see in all these brands that there is more kind of fashion forward going into it. Like, you have the different fits, a button and a zip, a stretchy just waistband, crop tops, regular tees, that there is becoming something for everyone. So you're not just shutting out a whole group or groups of people, but I offer like shorts in this length and a shirt here. There's literally something for everybody, designs for everybody. And I love it so much. And coming from a fashion background, like a high-end fashion background, and bringing it to the outdoors, I can totally see now where this comes, because I always just wonder, like, where did the inspiration come from to do these like loud, bold prints or find these fits and whatnot. So I think that that's just incredible that you went, like I said, that 180 from in Florence, totally. Italy, and then now over here with a bike brand. Like, wait, what? Where'd those wedding dresses go? And did that, having that experience in the fashion industry, were you designing, like just designing clothes, or were you in the full merchandising, buying kind of arena? So when you went to get those samples, you kind of knew what you needed to do to get those samples, or what was that experience like?
That's such a great question, because I never worked in the industry. So I got a degree in apparel design and production, and I got a degree in business marketing, and I did an internship in Florence for an Italian designer. But I never had real world experience working in the industry. So I had the creative background and I had the education, but I did not have the real world experience, which I think, and I've talked about this before, I think that it actually worked to my advantage, because I was very naive to what I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know, but I had also not worked for a brand. So I wasn't trying to replicate the way that someone else had done it, which probably would have been really hard for us to do because we didn't have the resources to build it the same way. So in some ways we spent time, and when I say we, it was me in the beginning with lots and lots of support from friends and family, but I had to recreate the wheel in ways that was maybe an unnecessary expenditure of my energy and my time. But I learned like how, or figured out how to build a business with nothing from the ground up. And so some of that meant that I did it in a way that no one else had done it. And it made sense for us, and it was right sized for us, and it was affordable for us. And that's what led us to that model. And so it has taken us longer, I think, to get to the size that we are now. And to have a lot of the systems in place that we have now. But I wouldn't trade it, because I had such an amazing education figuring all of that out. And like I said, not trying to do it in the way that was like industry norm led to some innovation and positive change for, I think, the industry in our realm and for us as well.
I think a lot of the women we have on here have a similar path in that they just kind of went in blindly. And for me, that is what I tend to do. And I think it's just the way certain people do things. It's the way we're wired. And for me, it's what works out. That, yeah, it might seem like, oh, that was the harder way, but I just tend to learn the harder way and like to, because it makes me a little bit more ready for the random shit that comes up. It's like, well, I already went through all this, so now the path forward seems a little bit easier versus like following a certain like lined out path. And then if something happens, you're like, oh no, like, what do? I have no idea how to pivot or deal with this adversity. And I think that creates a lot of successful business women, business people, is when you actually like put yourself right into the middle of it and out of the gate, setting yourself up for some adversity. Because like I said, immediately, like, I don't know. We're going to deal with it as it comes, because we're so used to kind of being prepared and like, what if this happens? What are we going to do? It's like, you can't have answers for everything anyways. We've experienced that through 2008 to 2020 for sure. I think our generation especially, we've seen so many different like peaks and valleys of this economy and things that I never felt that I had really a stable economy anyway. So I'm like, well, why not give this a shot? Who knows? Like, I don't need that 401k or whatever, because who knows if it's going to be there. Like, I'm just going to shoot for the moon. And people can obviously disagree with that all they want, but I've just been like, you don't know if your safety net is going to be there. Hopefully it is, but what's that saying? It's like, jump and hope the net like appears or something. And again, not everybody agrees with that. And there's different degrees of your jumping or how big your net maybe starts. But so many stories we've shared have started with like, I don't really know, and I'm going to figure it out. And that's also because you don't have the resources at that time to get that roadmap. Like, you weren't in the industry, knew someone who started an apparel business that could give you all these things. And that's why you started the business, is because what you wanted wasn't offered. So of course you don't have someone who's right there to say, this is how you should do it. There's plenty of times I will take advice and I'm like, yeah, I wish I had someone to tell me like, hey, don't do that, but do this. But for the most part, it's like, I just got to give it a try anyways.
Yeah. And I think that it only makes us smarter to learn as much as we can. Like, I am a sponge when I can talk to anybody that knows more than me, or even people that know less than me, because just drawing from other people's experience, I think, is nothing but useful information. But you still have to like just kind of go with your internal compass, because I'll talk to people at companies bigger than us, or, you know, even successful companies, but the way that some things are done are just archaic in nature. And they're being done that way because that's the way it's always been done. And so if you try to do it just because that's how it's always been done, but it doesn't really make sense, there's no room for innovation there. And I think that sometimes just by necessity, there's innovation because we can't even figure out how to make it work that way because no one should be doing it that way anymore. And we're just starting from scratch, so we can give that up and do something different. So I think, of course, there's some things that you just can't change, like financials of a business. There's just, you know, like, it either works or it doesn't work. And you can't change that and say that you're going to like throw that caution to the wind when it comes to that. But I think you can find the areas where you can play, and you can find the areas where you can say like, no, I'm going to try it. And the only reason that I decided to try Shredly was I knew that I would fail if I didn't try, because there was a guarantee that it wouldn't work. But if I did try and I failed, then at least I tried. And if I didn't fail, then you never know what's next, you know?
Yep. It is definitely just, some cliches are too true of if you don't try, you won't know, and you can only give it your best and see what happens. And if you don't give it your best, or you don't even try, then you'll never, ever, ever know what would have happened, what could have happened. And you're definitely going to feel better if you at least try. And sometimes it's a timing thing for sure. And that's happened to many, many people. They had this idea, gave it a shot, and there's so many other things at play that were against them. But that's just the luck of the draw sometimes too with life. And you gotta like pick yourself back up, try something else, or be like, hey, I tried it, didn't work for me then. If it worked for someone else 10 years later, shoot, good for them. I was too early. It's like, well, that means at least your wheels are turning in the right direction. So maybe there's room for something else. Or you may have also inspired somebody along that journey that you never even knew you did that for them. So still putting that.
You're reminding me of this concept. Have you ever read the book by Elizabeth Gilbert called Big Magic?
No, I haven't. It's been on my reading list though, for sure.
It's really good, and especially for creatives. So she talks about this theory that she has evidence of happening in her own life, where ideas are like these living things and they are looking for a home. And if you don't nurture it and give it a home, it will find someone else to do it. And I feel like so many people can say like, oh, I had that idea and then someone else did it. It's because I didn't do anything. But she has like an example of this, of a book that she was going to write and she hadn't told anyone about it. She didn't write it. Someone else wrote it and it was her idea. It was like kind of a bizarre thing. But I do think of that, like, and now when I get these new ideas, I'm like, oh gosh, it's going to go somewhere else, but I can't do anything right now. I'm busy.
Yes.
I do believe like Shredly was so pulled from us by the market. It was so ready for us and our product, and still is, that I do believe if we wouldn't have been the first to do it, someone else was going to do it. And you see other examples of other people doing different iterations of it. And sometimes I think that's because they see it working and they want to do it too. Or the other thing, you know, like these ideas can start to go to other people if you don't nurture it and give it a home.
Absolutely. I've heard that concept and I fully every time I think of like a little knickknack or something, I'm like, here's the $1 million Shark Tank idea, like you got it because you watch that show and some things that people come up with, you're like, oh my God, how did I not think of that? But you also know there's like 100 other people out there who are like, I thought of that. Why didn't I actually like do something with it? So, but it's one of those things you think they're so simple. You're like, well, this has to exist already. I'm not even gonna like, but then you hear the stories of people like thought about it. So they looked it up and they realized this doesn't exist. Like, so I am always Googling something weird. Like, hey, does this exist? Is this already out there?
I do that too, and I put my privacy setting on my browser because I know that it's being tracked, like what you Google. And there are like think tanks out there that will look at search data and they'll see like what are people looking for that might not be out there. And so I've like tried to be really like I'm superstitious about my.
Oh my God, I love that. That's a like trick of the trade. I'm going to have to start doing privacy browser. I've always like, I don't really know if I should use this or when. And okay, when I'm researching my ideas, I'm turning that thing on. Awesome.
Very undercover research.
I'm curious, what was the first like born style or styles that Shredly did offer?
Well, so we started, and we have two different words that we use style for. So style is like the short style, like the silhouette, the fit. And then some people call the print styles. So our very first, what we call style was, we had one short and one top and one chamois. So we launched with one of each, and that was it. And then like the iconic print the first year that I named after myself, which is kind of funny looking back, but it was the peacock pattern because and there's a story behind it. So my senior design line was of evening wear, and I did all of these silk gowns with feather embellishments, and they were all peacock feathers. Oh. So I've always had this thing for peacock feathers, and that was like the first print that I saw that I was like, I have to have that. That has to be a short, like that deserves to be a short. So that was kind of like, when I did the first line, there was a few prints that I just saw and I couldn't not make them into shorts, and that was one of them.
What was the name of the style itself?
It was called, oh gosh. You're testing this.
Well, so it leads to my next question where it's since been renamed.
Yes, you're right. And it's been named a couple times because we were like finding our way and what works, and it was really hard because my inspiration for the line from the beginning was we're making mountain bike shorts, but there's no reason why they can't be used for everything else. Like the rest of us do other things besides bike. We hike, we camp. And so I was very thoughtful about all of the details. And also there was just this look, like I was talking about looking at pictures, like there was no mistaking what we were wearing, that you were not wearing bike apparel. And so my goal was that you could be wearing bike apparel, but when you took off your helmet and your shoes and your gloves, you would be mistaken for wearing like cool, like maybe athletic apparel or even like street style stuff. And we actually have a ton of women who love our shorts and they don't bike. And they'll like dress them up and wear them out to dinner. Like they just love the fun, colorful prints. And so it was really my goal. So this has a purpose to your original question. I'll have to look back at what it was first called, but I think we launched it as the multi-sport, or I think it might have even been the basic. And then I realized like the basic's not a good word. Like, let's go with something. And it went to the omni for a little bit, which is like multi-purpose. And then when we launched other shorts, we went to multi-sport and then mountain bike. And mountain bike had like special venting. And so there's been this evolution over time. Our longer shorts were called the downhill knicker. And then we learned like knickers are underwear, which I knew in Europe, but I didn't think, that really mattered. Like we thought that was more indicative of the length. So there was just like this evolution. And that's like the beauty of being a one-person show. Like you can name your style one thing one year and change it the next year. We're like, that's actually really hard and complicated and not great for everybody buying the product. And so we try to do less of that. But even so, just 2 years ago, we did this massive overhaul. We upgraded the styles of our shorts. We renamed them because we'd gotten big enough and we had enough styles that it was starting to get confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we have families where we have the all-time, which is our zipper snap, and it comes in different lengths. And then we have our limitless, which comes in different lengths. And we've added an explorer collection. And it all kind of is determined, the family of shorts are determined by the waistband style, because we've learned women are very loyal to their either zipper snap or they want the full stretch. And so we try to treat all of them mostly the same with different lengths within them based on what we know, people want. And so it's basically different waistband families and inseam lengths, how it's all set up now.
Okay. I love it. And I love just the names, like you mentioned, just getting the message out that this is not just for mountain biking, even with the name All Time. Like, okay, I can wear these all the time. I can use them for anything, and preference will be lengthwise. Limitless. There's no limit to what I can do in these. Explorer, you can go explore, bike, hike, whatever. So I love that you've created this sense of do all in these styles. And like, yeah, there's obviously it's a biking focused, but once you kind of look more into the styles, it's like, yeah, how is it different than a technical pair of hiking shorts? Like, it's
right.
Technical apparel, it's wicking, well fitting. So it just comes down to what pockets you need or want or length. And yeah,
that's actually such a distinguishing factor. Like, there's the performance that you want out of a really great mountain bike short is very similar to what you'd want out of a hiking or a climbing, like other technical apparel. But pockets is like, it's the make or break. It's like the holy grail of technical apparel. And women forever, I think, have been deprived of pockets. And so we know it's something that they're incredibly passionate about. And they want real pockets. Like, they don't want a half hand to fit in a hand pocket. They want a full deep pocket. People love to put things in their pockets. And so we have had that. And then they're loyal to what kind of pocket they want. Like, we had a cargo pocket on the outside of our short, and we wanted to kind of update it and do a zippered pocket. And some people lost their minds that they were like so sad to lose their cargo pocket. So it's actually really fun to know that your most loyal customers have things about your shorts that they love, love, love it for. And they don't ever want that to change. So it's really great because we'll hear about it if we change something that they love, that they miss. And we love that. Like, we go out of our way to collect customer feedback because we are in the business of making apparel that they need and want. So it is beneficial for us to hear directly from them and give them what we want. So we do love getting that in all forms.
Yeah, and as we mention all the time, especially when we have like apparel founders on, it's got to be a hard place when you really want to give the people what they want, but there's no way you can make everybody happy. So you really have to, like, okay, what is the majority saying here? What is going to happen if we do change this? And we have how many people over here saying like this is their favorite feature, and we're thinking about removing it. Like, it's got to be such a battle. Like, do we add another style? Do we keep this? Do we have enough people over here who are really dedicated and loyal to this, or it's differentiating enough that we can justify having both? Like, the hard part to understand because of like big corporations and manufacturing who, and again, this is something we talked about recently with Mallory of Ewer, trying to kind of open up general consumers' eyes when they are shopping is like bigger brands that have crazy production, they can have like hundreds of styles. But smaller brands really have to hone in, and you wonder like, oh, why can't you just make more? Just make this style. It's like, it doesn't make sense financially. Like you said, there's some things you just cannot change, and that's like finances of a business. What makes sense and what doesn't. Dollars in and dollars out are still.
Yeah. And there's another element to it as well, which is that it has to be affordable. We all know, like, things are getting more and more expensive, and it is hard to, our pricing structure is such that, like, first of all, we need to be able to survive. We believe in paying fair wages. And so it is hard. We try to educate when people reach out. We'll get people reaching out about the price. Like, how could you justify what we feel is like a very common, we see in the marketplace, like there is a cost of making a pair of shorts. And when you add a feature, or if you were to tick all the boxes of all the things that all the people want, would they be willing to pay the price for what that is going to cost? And there's a tricky balance there that you have to, when you're making premium products that are intended for a specific purpose, there's certain things we just cannot give up that we won't give up. And so, yeah, it's always a tricky thing. Like, where do you land on price and features? Are there enough? Are there too many? And we're also very thoughtful and intentional about putting stuff out there. We don't want to put stuff out there that people don't need. Like I said before, Shredly was pulled through the market from us, which is you want that instead of pushing things out there. And so we still always try to remain making sure that our product line and our category offerings are being pulled from us and not just being pushed. Yeah. And they have a purpose and a home and a reason for being.
I think you guys are doing a great job at it. And it brings up a point that I know some of my favorite smaller brands, when you look at them or when you see their new collection for fall or spring or whatever, you're like, oh man, only 2 new styles or colors. And you got to reel it back in and remember why. Like you just said, we're not just out here making stuff just to have it. It serves a purpose and a point, and we can't just make something in every single color and whatnot. It's hard loving these brands and wanting so much from them, and having to remember okay, yes, they can't just do what I want, I got to do what's needed, what they need, and all of that stuff. And you mentioned, kind of about education, and I know this is not exactly what you meant, but it reminds me of something I wanted to ask you about with your retreats and how you got started on that side of things with Shredly. When did you start wanting to put events on, or feeling that there was a need for these to happen?
Well, so it's kind of a product of knowing what our customers want from us. And we have such amazing, loyal customers that are actively engaged in our community. And we wanted to give them more opportunities to engage with us and welcome them in. And so the idea for our retreats came from attending other events, especially women-specific events, and recognizing that out of all of the events that were being offered, there was this one thing missing. And for us, it was the combination of this amazing communal experience that's really fun, like a festival, but the skills part of it. So many women want to increase their skill set, but there's some environments that are intimidating, and there's so much to pick from right now. There's so much more than there used to be, which is so cool to see, because it's what we want, right? We want to bring more people into the market. We want to welcome more people into the space. And so we felt like there was this magical experience missing that combined all of your favorite elements from some of these bigger women's only retreats or festivals, that combined all of those experiential things with skills. And so that's what we feel we offer, is a really amazing weekend that's all about you, and all about this transformative experience. It's really cool for me. I'm not a coach. And I had not actually, prior to some of these retreats, had professional coaching. And it is invaluable. It is so cool. Even if you've been riding, I've been riding my whole life. Was I an incredibly technical rider that started with this foundational skill set and built upon it? No, it was very much figuring it out. I started to ride in the days before dropper post. That was very different than now riding with a dropper post. And so really learning, and I love every year, breaking down the foundational skills and going back to the beginning and remembering. And then you're riding in 3 days. You can come in as an advanced rider and leave with so much more of your foundation and then you can come in as a very beginner rider and leave with so much confidence. And so knowing that the key to loving and enjoying a sport that can be very intimidating is learning the skills and knowing how to use them, is kind of a magical experience in itself. But then offering so many other great things, like the emotional side of shopping that we were talking about, creating this really fun environment where they have exclusive access to our little traveling boutique, or other arts and crafts, just connecting on this level around this sport is something that we tested, and we realized that there was magic in it. And so we've continued to do it with some really amazing partners. So that's kind of how they started. We just saw a need for something that was missing.
Absolutely. I love that. Just taking kind of the bigger events that were happening and making them a little bit smaller, more, oh my God, the word, closer together.
Intimate.
Yeah.
Gotcha. With my hands. I really get
totally. But I see too that you have one coming up it's in October. You have a few coming up, but the one in the end of October with Marley Blonsky, that's one I've been looking at because we had Marley Blonsky on here too. And again, just creating these environments, these needs for these people who it's like, there's people like us out there, people with you to connect with. It doesn't have to be this intimidating sport that, hey, we're just here to learn and get better and you're like testing your skills every day and you should be progressing. There's so much more to it, like the connection of the people who are also there. Well, I guess the internet's trying to tell us something that we've been doing this close to our normal time, and my internet's trying to tell me like, oh, I'm tired. But before we get out of here, I would love for you, Ashley, to share anything with the people of like where to find you, upcoming events, and also, per your request, I have to hear what this joke is from your nephew. I also have to tell you that once I read this, asking what my favorite joke is, I was like, oh my God, I don't know. I feel like I used to have one and I almost text my dad. But instead, I downloaded a dad joke app that's supposed to be a new joke every day. And so I check it before we get on here to record. And it's awful. It is so bad. I was like, oh, no. I should have like looked at this yesterday. It is like not even jokes. So I was like, dang it. I blew it on this, but I'd love to hear.
I'll give you one of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my nephews have the best jokes and they definitely come from their grandma, my mom. But they're all like actually really quite funny. She has this little card set because you can Google and they're like terrible. They're not even funny. But she likes to just surprise me with them where she'll casually ask them it and they'll give the answer just complete straight face, like their delivery is perfect. So one of my two favorites, one is why did the hamburger go to the gym? To get better buns.
I was like, hamstrings. Like,
it's cute.
Oh my God, that is a good one.
Wait, I've got two more. The art of remembering jokes is you have to go tell someone else.
Yep.
After this, you have to go tell them over and over and over, and then you'll remember. Okay, what did one tomato say to the other tomato? What did the fast tomato say to the slow tomato? That's what it is.
Are you going to catch up?
Yeah, catch up. Okay, last one. Last one. What do you call a hill of cats? A pile of cats.
A pile of cats. Kitty litter. Wait. Oh, I made my dogs bark like there's a cat here. Oh, a kitty litter. Is it kitty litter?
Oh, that's my dog will bark at that word too. No, a meowton.
Okay.
A meowton.
Oh my gosh.
I kind of messed up. I'm notorious for killing. I said a pile of cats. It's really, I said a hill of cats. You have to say a pile of cats.
Okay.
but I have to go back to something that we were talking about because it's so near and dear and I'm so excited about it. The retreat that you were bringing up about Marley. First of all, Marley is just like a top-notch human and we align so much in just our outlooks and our goals in things in this space. And so partnering with her is like a dream. And the retreat that we're having with her is going to be so incredibly special because it's intentionally just put the word out there that this retreat is like for all bodies, because I think we've talked, like mountain biking can be intimidating for so many different reasons. And one thing that we wanted to really do is create a safe space for people that might not consider themselves mountain bikers, whether that be because of their riding ability, they've never done it, or their body. And so we are so excited because I think that one's going to specifically be pretty magical, because there's this, there's so many different conversations going on about what athletes are. And we all know you're an athlete if you're an athlete. You're an athlete if you do any sport, and you can do any sport in any body. And so I think that having this experience with Marley and I cannot wait to see how it unfolds. And so you had asked what events we're going to be at. We have 2 more retreats this year. We have one in Park City, which is it's an iconic riding destination. That one's really fun. And it happens to be at a beautiful time of year when the colors are changing. So if you're looking for a fall getaway, that one's amazing. It's at the end of September in Park City. And then over Halloween weekend, we're doing our retreat in Moab, and that is the retreat with Marley. And then we will be at Rome Fest, which is like such a great, incredible event. That's the middle of September. I'm kind of hopping around with my dates, but that wraps our event season for the year. So you can always find us online at shredly.com, or we're most active on Instagram, which is just at Shredly. So those are the best places where you can find us. We always love to welcome new people into our community. We're always happy to chat too. Like if you're just bike curious about what that might mean, we've got lots of different people in our sphere that are all different levels of bike, or just, kind of an active community. So we're always happy to welcome more people into the space.
I love it. And you all out there know you can find the links in the show notes. And we had Sam Ryan on here a couple weeks ago, who is the director of operations and partnerships with Rome Fest. So all you out there who heard her and are either going to Rome Fest, be sure to go visit the Shredly gals for sure and check out the retreats. I love the one with Marley. Sounds absolutely magical. That's what just caught me too, is what you mentioned of like the inclusivity of it all. It can be intimidating. I personally is going through like feeling my body changing over the years, where people who I don't already know or know my past, I feel like might look at me like that I'm not an athlete, but people who know me know what I've done in my past and whatnot. So I've been going through this own personal struggle of like almost feeling unwelcome after being heavily in these things for years and my whole life, so that it's like a weird kind of identity crisis almost. So yeah, like that caught my eye of like, yeah, this is like just a reminder for myself that like, no, I can't be pushed out if I'm already in. Like I'm still here.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise around that. There's so much more we could talk about in that realm, but I commend you for talking about that, because I know that you're not alone in feeling that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for coming on, sharing the background of Shredly, dealing with these connection issues we came up with at the end, which hopefully none of you out there even noticed, because I'll do some magic. But yeah, it's been so great. And I hope we get to chat again soon. And I really hope to make it to one of these retreats someday for sure, because the whole weekend, like that's just what's needed. The magic around it, not just a race event or something, but all the community aspects that they involve. So everybody out there, don't forget to go follow Shredly if you're not already. Check out the website, check out the options for retreats and things, and be sure to follow along as they continue to grow and just be a big name in the outdoor industry for women.
Oh, thank you so much, Taryn. Thank you so much for having me.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and would do us a huge favor, since we don't have any sponsors or anything like that, and would rate and review us on whatever platform it is you use, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, whatever it is. And if you're listening and downloading just through the website, tearingituppodcast.com, leave comments. We'll definitely engage back with you. And on social media right now, we're just on Instagram. Tearing It Up Podcast is the handle. Like the post, share the post, comment on the post, whatever it is you got. Show us your love so we just stay relevant and show up in the rankings at all. So again, rate and review, please. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.